I'm going to build a Proxmox server. Never done anything like that before, but I recently just got into Linux containerization and figured I need something that'll run my containers, that'll run my VMs. Because right now, every time I start a new project or need some sort of minimal machine, I just buy a Raspberry Pi or a Raspberry Pi derivative, and now I have a stack of those. And I thought, you know what, let's consolidate. Let's just have this machine that can serve as sort of like a playground instead of me just buying a new thing every time I want to try something out. So this machine here is not actually meant to be a server. This is a workstation. So this is an HP Z6 G4. Came out around 2017, so this is very new for me, but it is a little bit dated in terms of hardware, which means that I got it at a pretty decent price. But inside this thing, we have two Xeon Silver 4114 processors. These each have 10 cores, and then with hyper-threading, we get 20 threads for a total of 40 threads. This also shipped to me with 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM. As far as I know, it's not ECC. Might add that in the future, but that's at least enough RAM to run some ZFS pools and then also some machines to play with, and that can always be expanded later. It also shipped with a terabyte NVMe drive, which I'm probably not going to end up using at all. We're going to throw a bunch of SATA drives into this thing. It's a big machine. You can already see from the outside here, we have a bunch of USB options. We have 5 1/4 drive bays. We even have a DVD drive, just in case we need that. I don't think we will, but hey, nice to have. Yeah, I'm going to show you the inside of this thing and what we're going to end up doing to it. But before I do that, let's take a look around the backside. So here we are around back. If we just go top down here, we have our power supply. So this is actually a 1,000 watt power supply, so pretty beefy. We can put pretty much whatever we want to in here. Audio, actual PS2 keyboard and mouse, though this thing has Windows 11 on it, and I plugged in PS2 keyboard and mouse, and that didn't seem to do anything. I don't know what's going on with that, but that's good to have. I might end up using that for plugging this thing into a KVM. We'll see. We got 6 USB 3 ports. We have our gigabit Ethernet, and then we have this Intel AMT port. So from what I can tell, that's like Intel's poor man's integrated lights out, which I guess HP didn't want to put their enterprise ILO on this thing. But that might be something interesting to play with. I've heard it's kind of bad, but hey, you know, we'll figure it out. And then we also have 2 graphics cards down here. So you probably can barely make it out with the lighting here. These are each 4-port, so I could hook 8 displays up to this thing, but these are Quadro P620s, I believe. So you'll notice that the motherboard doesn't have any sort of integrated graphics. Well, these processors don't have any integrated graphics. So if we actually want to see something, we will need a graphics card. I'm not going to be using graphics on this. From what I can tell, Proxmox doesn't need a GPU for anything unless you're running some sort of GPU intensive task on one of your hosts. So I'm probably going to end up taking those out of here. One interesting quirk of these HP machines, though, is that they don't boot without a graphics card inserted unless you use one of their configuration tools to modify a secret option in the BIOS so that it'll boot in quote-unquote headless mode. I believe that these GPUs actually don't use a lot of power at idle. I think I heard somebody say 5 watts or so. So it's not the end of the world, but at the end of the day, I really don't need a GPU in there. So I might take those out and repurpose them for something else. That's a later me problem. So right now, let's take a look on the inside of this thing and figure out what our plan is for hooking up all the storage. So this is the inside of the machine. As I mentioned, here's our 2 Quadro P620s. They look like they're taking up PCIe X16 slots. If anybody actually knows of a PCIe X1 graphics card that's passively cooled and uses very little power at idle, let me know. If I do end up just needing a graphics card to have in here, it'd be great to use one of the small slots. And I know a lot of people recommend there's like an Asus that is very popular, but I think that it's like unobtainium these days. So unless you're willing to pay out the nose, you really can't get that card, which doesn't completely rule it out, but there's got to be other like really low power draw X1 cards. We actually have our processors, and I guess you could say RAM, up here. So what's interesting is that the main processor is actually under this shroud, and the second one is on this add-in card here. So let me actually see if I can't flip this out without breaking something. And this is a two-handed operation here. So there we go. Flip it around. Yeah. So we have obviously processor under here. We have 3 RAM slots right here. And if I pull this away, and then actually let me set this down. And then flip this out. We see that we have our processor in the motherboard, 3 RAM slots here, 3 RAM slots there. So I'm not entirely sure what the distribution is with how much RAM you should be putting in one, should I say, should be putting around one processor versus the other processor. It's kind of strange to me that they have different amounts of RAM slots. This is probably all written up in the manual or something where, oh, you know, they share this, and you know, these are run independently or something like that. I know that this configuration can use at least, what is it, 328 gigs of RAM, so I don't think I'm going to be having RAM trouble anytime soon. But I just thought that that was really interesting about this daughter card, is that it seems like you just get the 3 slots. So, yeah, a little bizarre. As I mentioned before, we have these 5 1/4 bays here, but I'm going to primarily be using these 3.5 inch bays. So, if I reach into my bag of tricks off screen here, I have 2 of these Dell branded, but also Intel branded SSDs. So these are terabyte drives. So I'm going to set these up in a ZFS pool for the root file system. And then for actually running the VMs, I have these 2 Kioxia 2 terabyte SSDs. So these are, all 4 of these drives are 2.5 inch drives. But then I have from IcyDock here, I didn't get any of their fancy offerings that will allow me to like pull drives out the front. That was just expensive, and I'm not planning on removing these anytime soon. But we get these little caddies here. So crack one of these open. Don't even think we need this mounting hardware. But yeah, you have these IcyDock caddies. They have a little spring lever here, and you can just slide in your 2.5 inch drives, and you could do 2 of them per 3.5 inch bay. So these, I mean, they're by name brand, but I think they were actually cheaper than the no name brand, or pretty damn close. And I've heard great things about IcyDock, so I'm really excited to try those out. So we have the drives, we have the caddies. I also have some of these Cable Matters power splitters, because they just do not give you enough power options here. I guess we have 2 here. I think there's 2 back here, but I don't want to do any sort of crazy crossing over or anything. So these are just going to make my life easier. And then, as usual, a mess of SATA cables. So yeah, all these cables are Cable Matters branded, which I've had good luck with. Pricing these out between these and StarTech, these are just a little bit less expensive. So yeah, now that you know my plan, let me actually go ahead and work on hooking everything up. Alright, so we ran into a couple of snags there. I didn't realize that the power splitter cable that I had wouldn't work in such a tight spot, so that was able to be mitigated a little bit by flipping some of the drives over, and then that gave just enough clearance so that we could get those connectors in there, and instead of pushing against each other, they were just butt up against the SATA connectors. So that's all in there now. Probably could have gotten longer SATA cables. I might look into different splitter for power, longer SATA cables at a later date. But right now I believe everything is actually situated in here, although a little haphazardly. So at this point, before I actually do any installation with regards to Proxmox, I want to test these drives a little bit. So I'm going to use Smart Tools to do a quick analysis and just make sure that these drives are okay and I don't have to return any before going through and setting Proxmox up. Okay, so we have the machine booted up here, and I'll spare you what I went through with the BIOS, which was basically just trying to change the boot order, putting VTX on, turning secure boot off. But yeah, even though I have the boot order set up to go from USB, it seems I can only actually launch from this USB drive going through this F9 boot menu here. It doesn't automatically select it. And I also noticed that the flash drive I have with Ventoid just will not boot on this thing at all. I just get like a black screen and it hangs. It's really bizarre. It never even makes it to the HP splash screen. So we have the tried and true easy to boot drive in here, which I verified it does actually boot from. So we're just going to load that up and get into Debian right now so we could take a look at the drives that were just installed. And something I want to add, I didn't realize this before because the eBay listing didn't mention it, but the 64 gigs of RAM in this are ECC. So I don't even have to worry about replacing those with ECC. So that's good news. I like that. But yeah, let's see if I can get this thing to boot into Debian Live, and then we can take a look at those drives. Okay, so we're in the Easy to Boot menu here. So if I go to the main menu folder and choose Debian Live, and I believe that I just choose this first one, I think. And then if I go to Live System, okay, I zoomed you in here a little bit because the resolution's so high. For me, it's still pretty small, so let me see if I can do this. So we're going to want to list our drives, so let's do an F disk with list. Okay, so I see we have our NVMe drive, which I don't care about, dev SDA, dev SDC, dev SDB, dev SDD, and then dev SDE is going to be our flash drive that we're booting from, so we don't want to worry about that. Cool, so we know dev SDA and dev SDB, they actually ordered them properly. Those are going to be our boot disks, and the other two, C and D, are going to be where our VMs live. So to take a look at these drives, I'm going to use Smart Control or Smart CTL. From what I'm understanding, for SSDs, you really don't need to run a short test or a long test. If I had spinning disks, I would be running tests, I'd be doing bad blocks, I'd pretty much put them through their paces for like a week or something. But people just seem to be saying for SSDs, you can just use the A command, which I don't know if that means all or analyze or who knows. And that'll give you specs for the disk. So I'm just going to proceed with that. Let me know if you do something different or if I'm doing this completely wrong, but that seems to be the advice that I'm finding just looking through how to do this. So I imagine we'll need sudo again. -a. devsda. Let's see here. Okay. So we get a lot of stuff. Mostly I'm looking for reallocated sectors or any end-of-life information. So if we go through here, let's see. So reallocated sector count, so ID 5 is 0. Quite a few power on hours, but these are enterprise grade drives. End of life is at 0, so that's good. Percent life remaining at the very bottom, 97. All right, so this drive's in pretty good shape. As I mentioned, I don't really think that the power on hours and data written is too useful a metric. I think that the percent life remaining actually is sort of combines all of that. Not every drive is going to have a percent life remaining. I think that that's particular to these. I guess they're Intel drives. I didn't actually see what it said there, but I think this drive's in pretty good shape. But if we look at, I want to look at B. So looking at the same stuff, so no reallocated sectors, end of life is 0. Percent life remaining, this one's 83%. So not as good. But let me just for a second, does it say anything about the vendor for these? No, the disk model, SSD, SDC, I could probably look that up. But those other ones, those are labeled here as Toshiba, so I wonder if Toshiba is the actual manufacturer, or how exactly that works. But let's take a look at those drives. So you can see here we don't get the same attributes. We can see reallocated sector count is 0. There's no bad blocks, no end-to-end errors. So yeah, this seems okay. I don't see anything too alarming here. And then if we check the last one, similarly, no reallocated sector. Yeah, as far as I can tell, these drives are in decent health, and there's nothing that would make me want to RMA them right now. So we're just going to proceed. Definitely let me know if there's something for these that I'm missing here. But yeah, I don't think that there's anything too alarming. So knowing this, we can shut down this live CD and then go ahead and proceed with our Proxmox installation. Okay, that was a little hairy. So I couldn't boot Proxmox from Easy to Boot's menu system. So I tried the onboard Ventoy, and that seems to have booted it at least so far, which is really weird because the Debian Live CD, it was the exact opposite. When I had originally tried to boot it from Ventoy in the Easy to Boot system, that didn't work at all, and I had to use Easy to Boot. So yeah, fun stuff. But yeah, let's proceed with the graphical install. I feel like something's supposed to show here, but there is not anything, but I can click I agree. Oh, that's interesting. So target hard disk. So I want to do ZFS. Do a RAID 1. Ooh, this installer is really going crazy here. So let's try to figure out how to do this. All right, we're just going to keep all of the default options here under advanced options for right now. I think I might want to at some point increase this arc max size, but for right now, I think everything's okay. So if I go down to next, United States, time zone. Change that to New York. Keyboard layout looks good. Here we can set the root password. And then the same down here. And then email. So this is apparently email where notifications are going to be sent. And we can do next. Yeah, so this is doing DHCP already. And then host name. And then reboot after successful installation. Sounds good. So we can see now that the machine has come back up, installation was successful, and we're presented with a login, but we're also given this URL here with the internal IP address that we can use to access this machine from any web browser that's on a machine on the same network. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up this machine on my laptop, and then we'll poke around a little bit, but more importantly, I want to get that second ZFS pool set up with those other two disks that are going to be used to store our VMs. So I'll go ahead and do that right now. Okay, I'm logged into Proxmox here, and I'm going to try to set up those other two disks in an additional ZFS pool. So there's a lot of other stuff I can go in here and touch while I'm here, like update that email address, and there's a little annoying nag screen when you log in that you don't have a license, and just all the little pleasantries. But for now, all I really care about is just setting up that pool. So if we come over to, I think we click on the node here, go to ZFS. We want to create ZFS. So I'm just going to go and use the standard tank naming system here. We'll do tank 0 just in case I don't expand this in the future. And then picking the RAID level, we're going to go with mirror. I looked up RAID Z and DRAID, and they look about as performant as one another, but from my understanding, they're really meant for if you have a lot of disks. I think I was seeing something that said, oh, if you have over 20 disks, use this, but if you just have a couple, just mirror it. So I'm going to mirror it. Just your standard RAID 1. Tank 0, we're going to check those drives that we want here. And then create. So now we have tank 0 set up here. Check the details on it. Looking good. Now what we want to do is actually have this set up so that we can put our running containers and VMs into tank instead of the R pool. So I believe we go, so we don't go to directory, I think we go back to data center. I'm not sure exactly why some stuff is under the node itself and some is under data center. It's probably like a clustering thing. But now that we're back over here in data center, you can go to storage here. Okay, so we see we have tank 0. And then let me just take a look here at, all right, so there's rpool/data. And then This is just tank 0. Okay, so yes, I remember with that R pool, your actual data that's outside of the root file system is in that R pool subdirectory. So we can, I believe, just use tank 0 as is. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually confirm that we can create a VM and have it live on this tank 0 pool. So to do that, we can either right click and do create VM, or there's these handy buttons up here. So I'm just going to skip ahead to OS. So I've already preloaded the Debian 12.9 installer here. System, sure, let's just try to do this as defaults. Storage, here's where we can actually choose our tank 0, and let's make this small. Let's make it, I don't know. See if it'll run on 8 gigs. CPU, sure. Memory, let's half that. Network, sure, whatever the default bridge is. We're just trying to see if this is actually working here. Awesome, okay, it looks like it created this VM here and just gave the name of 100. You can see here all of our allocations are set up correctly. And then if we go down to hardware, I see tank 0 here listed as the location of our hard disk. So this is looking pretty good as far as I can tell. Definitely need to play around with this a bit more and get some machines up, but this seemed to be a really simple way to get your redundant root installation set up on ZFS, as well as an additional storage ZFS pool set up for your running VMs and containers. So really excited with this. I didn't have to buy a ton of drives and kind of get stuff that maybe was a little bit too big for my needs. I think that this is going to suit me pretty well. But yeah, I'll definitely be able to utilize this when working on a whole bunch of additional stuff coming up in the future. So much better than just buying more single board computers.